Hey everyone, Mr. Richards here, and I am going to be talking about lesson 11. This is the draw loop. So, a little bit of background before we start here. Previously, we've worked on learning how to create scenes, and these scenes were static, meaning that they don't move around, okay? But what we want to do when we have apps or video games is we want to have the screen change, and so we need to find ways to make that happen. Now, the draw loop is one of the ways that you can have the screen change. Okay. Now, the function draw is kind of like a while loop if you've done, any other computer coding. And what that means is that this function will execute continuously, all right, over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, and it won't stop. And so we'll take a look at this, and it says run the code, see how it works, discuss with your partner whether this looks like the flip book you saw in the video, why or why not. Okay, so in part one you were supposed to watch the video, so you should do that. But let's take a look here. Okay, so we are seeing green dots appear on the screen. All right, so let's take a look at this code and figure out what's happening. So what we've done, okay, I'm gonna move some stuff around here. All right, let's pretend that we don't have this draw function. I can get that white space out too. All right, so all of this should be familiar to you. We are saying there's gonna be no strokes, so no outline. We're gonna fill it with the color sea green, and we are going to make an ellipse with an x coordinate that is going to be a random number between 0 and 400, and a y coordinate that's going to be a random number between 0 and 400. And if we click run, every time we would see that appears and disappears, and it is randomly moving around the screen because every time it runs, we are telling it to pick a random number for the coordinates. Okay. When we add the draw loop, what we are doing is two things. First, it's like hitting this run and reset, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a second. And you can kind of figure out how fast it is by looking at how fast they show up. And the second thing is that we are not deleting any of these things that had showed up before. Okay. So you'll notice that it isn't a little dot appearing on the screen and then disappearing. It's a dot appearing on the screen and then another one appearing on the screen and then another one and another one. See that? There they all show up. Okay. So that's how the draw loop works. Now, just like anything else, you have to keep aware or keep track of the order of things, because if you put sea green afterwards, oh, it still works, I guess. That's weird. Yeah. Maybe the order doesn't matter. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, level 3. Now it's your turn to do some work in the draw loop. Remember that the code inside the draw loop is run by GameLab over and over and over again, and the code outside of it is not run over and over, it's just run once. So add code to this program so that your drawing has orange circles being drawn too. Move on when your program looks like the picture on the right. Okay, we want to have orange and green circles. All right, so we are saying no stroke, and that is going to apply to everything in the draw loop. Okay, but these two things right here, these are going to go over and over and over again. So what we need to do is add another fill, and this time call it fill orange, and another ellipse, and put them at random numbers. Now, me personally, I want to do this as easy as possible. I'm on a computer, so this is going to be very easy. I'll switch to text. I'll highlight the text that I want to copy. I'll press Command C to copy, Command V to paste, and I'll just change from green to orange. O-R-A-N-G-E. Okay, so I can go to blocks, and you'll see that that's done. I believe you can click on something. Nope. You can't highlight these things and copy and paste them, so honestly, you would have to drag this stuff out and do random number and everything. So if possible, I think switching to text, highlighting and copying and pasting is going to be the way to win here, but up to you. So now when I click on this, it does show up just like, or very similar to this screen over here. So I'm going to say good enough, move on. Okay, the program has one small difference that will make it run a little differently. Again, though, remember, All the code outside the draw loop will run first one time. All the code inside the draw loop is run over and over. What will this program do? Write your prediction below. Okay, so we have world frame rate equals 5. Interesting. No stroke, background blue, fill yellow, background red, ellipse. Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. All right, let's ignore the frame rate and the other stuff. Every time we draw, we are going to be drawing a new background. On top of that background, we are then going to be drawing a ellipse in a random place. That ellipse is going to be blue, and it's going to have, wait a minute, sorry, we're going to start with the blue background, and then we're going to move on to a red background. That ellipse is going to be blue. No, it's going to be yellow. Okay, so a yellow circle will be drawn and erased. But honestly, what's going to happen is going to be, you know, covered by a background each time. So we are going to draw a background, which is going to cover the circle from before. Then we're going to draw a new circle. Then we're going to draw another background on top of it. So this will appear to, or this will seem to appear and disappear, or seem to move around the screen. So yeah, so we have a yellow ball that is seeming to move around the screen like this. All right, and that is what it does. All right, and that's one of the ways that we do animations. We don't really want the screen to be filled up with a whole bunch of copies. We want it to appear like one object is moving around, and so redrawing your background over the last scene is the way that we accomplish this, okay? By changing the sprite properties in the draw loop, we're on lesson 5 now, you can animate your characters. Do this, run the code to see how it works. Just go through your partner, why some code is inside the draw loop and some code is outside. Try changing the numbers in the random number block and running the program again. Okay, so here we go. We're creating a sprite. We're giving it the green alien animation, so that's that. We're setting the background orange. We are giving the sprite rotation a random number, and then we're drawing that sprite. Okay, so we should see this green alien appear on an orange background and randomly wiggle, I guess. Let's see if that happens. Yep. There we go. Okay, looks good. Try changing the numbers in the random number block and run the program again. Okay, keep working. So if we change the numbers to larger numbers, remember this is rotation in degrees, this sprite is going to become way more jumpy. All right. Yep. And if we make the numbers smaller, or the range smaller, -5 to 5 is a range of 10, it's going to be less jumpy. Okay, if we made it -2 to 2, we decrease the range down to 4. Just going to wiggle a little bit. Okay, cool. All right, the animation is already updating one sprite's X property to make it look like it is shaking. Run the program to see how it works. Edit the code in the program to make the second sprite shake like the first one. Move on when your program looks like the picture on the right. So we want it to look like this, and it currently, only the pencil is wiggling. We want the, looks like we want this to wiggle as well. Looks like they're wiggling about the same. But okay, so we got, we're drawing a white background. So the draw loop is covering the previous picture with a white background. Of course, we took that out. Okay. See how it just draws over and it looks weird? So having this inside the draw loop is important for making it look right. And we are putting the random number in for the pencil X. Okay. There's two ways you could accomplish this, really. You could make a variable and then update that variable's location within the draw loop. But the easiest way to do it is probably just to copy that same code. Remember, we don't want the brush and the pencil to appear on top of each other. So let's take that location. Actually, I should go. It was at 300. So looks like we want it to go between 300 and 310. So I'll set my lower limit to 300 and my upper limit to 310. And now we should have both of them wiggling. Sweet. Okay. All right, multi-part level here. Choose from the following activities. We'll just do all of them. Updating rotation, make both aliens dance in space. Only one's dancing. Okay, so let's make sure that we get another bit of code that does the same thing. All right, we gotta do blank equals. We'll go to sprites. And the name is Pink Alien. And we're going to make the rotation a random number from -5 to 5. Alright, 2 wiggling aliens. How exciting. Blurry sprite. Okay, so we want it to look like that, but it is, yeah. So I already showed you what happens here. We've got everything happening within the draw loop. And the best way to solve this is to try to take everything out of the draw loop that we can. Okay. And so these creating and setting the animation of the sprite, we only need to do that once. All right. And so what we want to have happen is we want to update something about that sprite's location after we give it a background and then draw the sprites. Okay, so let's see. That fixed it. Yep. Okay. All right. And let's go on to part C. All right. Our sprite is not moving. Ah. Remember, the sprites are only going to be drawn where the draw sprites command is. And the draw loop needs to contain that draw sprites command. Okay. And so we can see very clearly that this draw sprites is outside of the draw loop. So let's put it inside of the draw loop after we update the X and Y coordinates of that blender. Now it's moving all over the place, but we still have that background appearing. So the last thing we need to make sure we do, and I like to do this at the beginning of my draw loops, sort of a way to think about it is we're going to start fresh, is we're going to put that background in first, change the location of the sprite, then draw the sprites at the very end, and we're good. Okay. So we can move on to part 8, which is an assessment. Now, remember, when we are doing assessments, I'm not going to give you the exact instructions on how to do this, but I will give you some tips. All right, so going through the instructions here, we want the salt shaker to basically do that, and currently it's not moving at all. Okay, so add a draw loop so that that has a draw loop, and then make sure that the sprite appears to be moving up and down. Okay, so here's our draw loop, and basically what we need to do is we need to put a draw loop over here. We need to draw the background first. We need to update the sprite's Y position because it's not shaking left to right, it's shaking up and down. So we need to give it a random number for the Y coordinate only. And then after that, after we update that in the draw loop, then we need to draw sprites at the end. So it should be background salt.x equals random number something, or sorry, salt.y equals random number something, then draw sprites. And that should be what's in your draw loop. Okay, and a couple of challenges here. Well, really one challenge. So extend your scene. All right, and I have found that the challenge parts at the end of the lessons are where you can build in the most creativity because it gives you like new and interesting things that you can do. They're a little bit more complicated, but they're definitely cooler. So this is the sprite scene you made in the last lesson. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is the thing I made at my part 10. All right, you'll now be updating it a little bit to use the draw loop and sprite properties. Add a draw loop to your program. You should only have one. Use the lasso selector, click and hold plus drag to select the code that will be updated each time and place it inside your draw loop. Yeah, okay, whatever. All right, so I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to put my draw loop at the end here and make sure that I have my draw sprites function in there. I also need to make sure that my background is redrawn every time, which it will be. All right. And you'll notice that the first thing when I click run the first time, you'll see the text. Well, you won't see the text. And so I also need to make sure that my text is always drawn after my draw sprites, and that should keep it appearing here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my alien sprite some new coordinates. Okay, so we'll give my I'm going to put in a variable, we'll give it sprite dot rotation equals, and we'll give it a random number between -3 and +3. What did I do? Looks like I can't figure out what sprite is. Oh yeah, I should probably make sure my name is correct, because I want that alien to be the one that's running. Okay, there we have it. We have my alien wiggling. Super. So I guess this is not super exciting. It's nothing new, but what I will say is that every time we have an opportunity to work on one of these projects, you need to do it, because this will build on itself. And if you skip part of this, it's just going to be more work when we have to get to a lesson where you're only working on the project. If you do these little activities as we go, then the final part of the project, which will still be this scene, will be much, much easier for you. Okay, so that is lesson 11, the draw loop. It's one of the cooler things that we've learned, so hopefully you learn a little bit about how to use it, and this will make the rest of our coding a lot more interesting.